Hello, you're listening to Mike Madden on the Art Show podcast. Here you will find interviews with authors, musicians, artists and anyone else in and around the arts. Some of the interviews are taken direct from the Art Show on Expat Radio, with one or two specials in between. For fans of Romeo's Daughter, this show features guitarist and songwriter Craig Joyner. Craig talks about his first solo album, Art of Landing. It was first broadcast on Expat Radio on the 17th of June 2019. Good evening, this is Mike Madden on the Art Show on Expat Radio, and don't forget to visit our website, expatradio.uk. You can also find us on Facebook. So tonight I've got a very special guest. Some of you may remember him from the British rock band Romeo's Daughter, but tonight I'm talking to him about his brand new solo release. So welcome to the show, Craig Joyner.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much for having me.
You're more than welcome. Now, you've got the new album out, Art of Landing, released on the 5th of July,
yes.
As well as the single, May You Never.
Yes.
So you've been in the business for 25 years.
Yes.
So why now release the first ever Craig Joyner album?
I think it's because I started my career in folk. Actually, when I was like 15, I started playing folk clubs. Got my first couple of gigs actually from a folk band that used to play at my school, and they said, "Oh, you should come up to the Hemel Folk Club and play there." So that was kind of where I started off. But I did start a band at school, and the band, as it progressed, we sort of went through Fleetwood Mac covers and all that kind of stuff. And then I saw Top of the Pops, and I witnessed Rush do Tom Sawyer, and I put the acoustic guitar down and picked the electric guitar up. And ever since then, I've been making a hell of a lot of noise through amps and and doing that kind of stuff. But I never stopped. Playing the acoustic. And for the last 5 years, I've been recording songs, knowing that one day I was going to release things. But Romeo's Daughter came back and and I wrote a couple of albums for Romeo's Daughter, and we went out and toured them. And also I work for Universal doing library music, which is all the background music for documentaries and films and this, that and the other. And I think time just, when you do anything in the music business, you have to make sure that it's 150% or nothing. And I wanted to make sure that when I released an album on my own, that I could give it the time that it needed, because I spent a lot of time recording it and getting it right and mixing, mastering. And I just wanted to make sure I gave it plenty of time so that I wouldn't leave anything out, if you know what I mean, and I wouldn't rush anything. So I think that's probably why it's taken so long. And I must admit, my heart is in acoustic music. I love it, and so it's not before time.
Well, yes, absolutely. 25 years is a kind of a long preparation to this piece of music, and it's interesting that the single "May You Never" was originally recorded by John Martin. I know you're a big fan of John. And the background to this was an interesting YouTube clip of him breaking a string while tuning his guitar. And I'm sure amateur musicians with cheap guitars out there would have experienced that, but not in this case. So what was it about the way he was tuning the guitar that was so different?
Well, he was. I had a heckler in the audience, I think, if memory serves, and they shouted out for Solid Air, and I think he was going to do something completely different. So his guitar for Solid Air, I'm not totally sure what the tuning is, but it's low. It's very low. And he must have been half cut, if not plastered, and sat down with all his gizmos around him like he always does. And of course, he was tuning his guitar so radically and talking so brashly to the audience, if you like, in sort of a jovial kind of like, "Oh, I can't believe I've got to do this. I've got to tune this guitar now, having set myself, my set list is this and that and the other." And of course, he busted a string and then proceeded to pull it out of the peg with his teeth. And it was like, it was a real fingernails down the blackboard moment. And it was unreal. And eventually he managed to get the guitar tuned, and he sang the song, and it's just like a different fella takes over. It's like a different being takes over. He's this massive, larger than life character And then he starts performing, and you just think, well, where did that come from? Because it's just beautiful. And his playing was beautiful, and it was just cracking. As I say, he must have been doing it totally plastered. It was fantastic to watch, and I mean, anybody listening, I mean, they've only got to look it up on. It was one of those German '70s, almost like Hatfield Polly kind of gigs, you know, late night in concert, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's a good 8 minutes, 7 minutes long, because he's doing all this banter and trying to tune the thing and trying to find strings, you know, in the middle of, well, a Spinal Tap would say, in the middle of Austin, you know.
So, as you mentioned earlier, you began as a folk musician with the acoustic guitar. So where did it go? Where does it all start for you? When did you get your first interest in the guitar?
Oh, crikey. Ever since I knew what one was. And the earliest memory I have is when I was 6 years old. And I remember just falling in love with the shape of a guitar, let alone what it sounds like, you know, just the fact that it just looks so wonderful, you know, and just such an enigmatic thing. I remember getting my first guitar, and I just sat on the bed and stood looking at it for a while, you know. And I think there's many guitar players out there who will say the same thing. Once you fall in love with this particular instrument, you never fall out of love with it, unless, of course, you can't play it for love nor money, in which case you probably throw it against the wall. But I've been playing it for so long now. I mean, even when I come home from gigs, no matter what the gig is, the first thing I'll do is make a cup of tea and take the guitar out of its case and carry on playing. And I'm being a writer, I think that you tend to find that your brain's always working. And when you pick up a guitar, I mean, I don't think I've improved much in as far as the guitar is concerned. I don't think I've improved much probably in the last 10 years, you know, but my ability to play certain things has you know, got better. But I do tend to find that being a writer, you tend to pick your guitar up and think, right, I'm gonna practice now. I'm gonna go through scales. I'm gonna go through tunings and find different ways of doing stuff. And then you start writing. You get an idea, and then you're off, and you've stopped practicing now, and you're writing, and then you're reaching for your iPhone, you know, so you can, you know, make a note of what you've done, you know. So, no, my earliest memories they're still as clear now as they were then, and the goal has never been any different.
I think it's interesting that you are a songwriter as well as a musician. So what comes first for you? Is it the lyric or is it the music?
It depends, really. A lot of the time, I think the writing process for me is trying to catch myself off guard, because I think you'll find with a lot of writers, you know, you tend to start and go down the same alley that you always normally, you know, go through the same chord shapes, chord positions that you would normally go through. And I tend to find that the best way for me to do it is to, when I wake up in the morning, the brain's clear, I just pick the guitar up and turn my phone on and just see what's there. And it normally start with a combination of either a riff or a melody line that goes with maybe some very simplistic chords. The lyrics are always the thing that take their time for me. Sometimes they come quite quickly, and especially if you put a demo down with ramblings, you know, you can just sing the melody line and you sing what you think the lyrical content should sound like. And then when you listen back to it, 9 times out of 10, you can pick out 2 or 3 verses because you think you're about to say a certain line, you know, and it sounds to me like I'm about to say something. So I just pick the lyrics or the sentences out of what I've done. I always remember a thing on Bowie. He used to cut words out of newspapers and just throw them up in the air and then just see where they landed and see if it made any sentences and stuff like that. And I think it's the lyrics definitely come last, and I just go for something that sort of inspires you to want to keep playing it. And if you stop within 10 minutes, then it's generally no good. But anything after that, you know, especially if the idea runs for a good 5 minutes or so, then, you know, you feel inspired to play it. So normally a song will come out of that.
Right. And it's also quite relevant that, like you say, you can record all this on your iPhone, but back when you started, I guess it was a very different process.
Absolutely. It was one of those little cassettes, that they put to the weenie ones, the single speaker lays flat on the floor. They probably did loads of police interviews with that kind of a recorder, but that was what I had at the time. And then it went over to a ghetto blaster, which could record better. And then, of course, mobile phones came along, but the recording voice memo on the recordings there was absolutely shocking. So it would distort like mad. So yeah, thank God for the modern phones now. You can not only you can get your idea down, but if you're not quite sure you're going to remember what the chords are, then you can video it. So
yeah. So the other aspect of that, of course, is that the way that you sell records now is very different. So back in the day, you had to go down to your local record store, buy a single or an album, whereas now I would think it's almost all downloads.
Cool. I would think you're probably right there, and I don't know how much of it's paid for. I don't know how much is just downloaded for free. But yes, the music now is in the ether, isn't it? It's up in the atmosphere. It's the weirdest thing. We all spend our lives trying to make the music sound as good as we can, and then it goes out as an MP3, which is kind of stripping the absolute guts out of any song. I think a WAV is around about of a song is anything between 70 and 90, unless you're a prog band. But then, of course, you if you have an MP3, what is it, 9 megabytes, something like that? So
yeah.
There's a good 80 megabyte that's gone somewhere along the line. So, yeah, it's a shame because I'm sure like yourself, there was nothing quite like getting a record, and going through all the sleeve notes and just the artwork and everything. It was that physical thing, wasn't it? And I know that records have come back fractionally, but I don't know. I don't know if they'll stick around for that long. I don't know.
No, and I remember as well when it changed from vinyl to CD. The first thing I thought was, well, what about the album cover? It's just a different beast altogether.
It is completely. In fact, I think I don't know about you, the first CD I got was So by Peter Gabriel, and I'd already had it on vinyl, and I just thought that record sounded so brilliant. I thought, what's it going to sound like on CD? It's going to be incredible. And of course, I got it, and it was brilliant, But you move, don't you, through that genre of that time, and you've got all of a sudden you're replacing all your vinyl with CDs, and now look, I don't know, they don't even sell cars with CDs in them now.
No, they don't.
I used to, whenever I'd write a song, I always used to put it on a CD and then stick it in the car, and then take it down the road at full pelt and see what it sounded like and see if it sounded any good. And I could always get a rough idea of it, if it was any good, just by listening to it. And of course now I'm putting a stick in the car, a USB stick, and it's crazy. But I suppose move with the times. You've got to move with the times.
Some might say you don't even need a USB stick now because it'll Bluetooth from your phone, but
I know. Another generation lost.
Well, technology moves on, so let's dip into your album now, and let's play the single, the cover of May You Never. So this is Craig Joyner from the album Art of Landing, and this is May You Never.
May you never lay your head down without a hand to hold. May you never make your bed out in the cold. May you never lay your head down without a hand to hold. May you never make your bed out in the cold. Just like a great strong brother of mine, you know that I love you true. You never talk dirty behind my back, even though there are those that do. Please won't you bear it in mind? Love is a lesson to learn in our time. Please won't you bear it in mind for me? May you never lay your head down without a hand to hold. just like a good close sister to me. You know that I love you true. You hold no blade to stab me in my back, even though there are those that do. Please won't you bear it in mind? Life is a lesson to learn in our time. Please won't you bear it in mind for me? May you never lose your temper if you get hit in a barroom fight. May you never lose your woman overnight. May you never lay your head down without a hand to hold. May you never make your bed out in the cold. May you never lay your bed out in the cold. May you never make your bed out in the cold.
You're listening to Expat Radio. You're listening to Expat Radio, beaming out across France and around the world.
And that was Craig Joyner and his new single May You Never, taken from the album Art of Landing, released on the 5th of July. So you're listening to Mike Madden on the Art Show on Expat Radio, and tonight my special guest is Craig Joyner. Welcome back, Craig.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me.
And again, you're most welcome. So let's step back in time to 1987, when your musical career really took off with Romeo's Daughter. So how did that band come about?
It was actually, I mentioned earlier that I started a band at school, and that band just went on, and people came and went, and we got to the stage where we were a 5-piece with a girl singer, and we played a pub called the Horn of Plenty in St Albans, and we had this fella who was going to bring some management down to see if they, wanted to manage us, and fortunately for us that they did, and that was 1985, and we just basically started recording and doing demos and this kind of stuff in our manager's house, and straight away we did some demos with John Parr. Our manager knew John Parr, and of course he was riding really high at the time because he had St Elmo's Fire in charts, and he'd had such a fantastic year. And he came down. We did some demos at it was the Workhouse in the Old Kent Road. I doubt if it's still there, but fantastic studio, best studio we'd ever been in. And he was ruthless with us. I mean, he was so ruthless, but brilliant. I mean that in the best way. He taught us so much about songwriting, about production, about how you put a song together. And that was very, very early. We were all incredibly green, and we'd already actually auditioned for girl singers. We changed our girl singer, and we managed to find this lady, Lee Matty, and she became our singer. And the band became a 4-piece, and it was an incredible learning curve for us. As I say, we were all very, very green, and our manager, Olga Lang, she was the ex-wife of Mutt Lang, and things just got better from that point on, really. I think in 87 we met Mutt, and we took some of the demos that we'd done and some of the songs that I'd written, and we went down to his place in Guildford, and we just started doing some demos. And again, everything changed again. He had a different way of working, and he'd worked with so many amazing people. As I say, it was very, very difficult to actually have an idea and get it out because you're so awe-inspired, with the whole thing. 1 minute you're playing the Horn of Plenty in St Albans, and the next minute you're sat in, this fantastic studio in the middle of Guildford with a 72-channel desk in front of you, and it was quite awe-inspiring, But we got some great stuff out. And what with Mutt's connections with Clive Calder and Olga's connections with Clive Calder, we managed to get a deal with Jive Records, which were all part of Zomba Publishing. And we went from there. We finished the rest of the album. John Parr was still very much involved, so it was a collaboration between Mutt Lange and John Parr. I think John Parr, he produced 3 songs on that first album of ours, and Mutt did the rest. And it was an absolutely amazing time. And then, of course, the album kicked off, and we went playing everywhere. I think as I said, we played the Marquee to a packed audience at the Marquee, and the gig we'd done previously again was the Horn of Plenty in St. Albans. So it was a hell of a shock, I have to say, but an absolutely welcome one. You know, it was a marvelous moment. In fact, I think we all got a bit of a frog, we were all a tad choked up, should I say, when we came on stage that time at the Marquee. It was just staggering, you know.
And it was an iconic venue back then as well, so it must have been quite something. And then you then went on a US tour with the single "Don't Break My Heart" in the Billboard 100. So at that point, did you think you'd made it then? Was that kind of the start of a stellar career?
I think it was the beginning of something, and that we were getting a lot of press from the album. Probably mostly because Mutt was involved, you know, if I'm absolutely honest, because, you know, every now and then he sort of dips his toes and goes for something that he hadn't done before, or not a recognised band. And we certainly weren't a recognised band. And, you know, we got some good songs, and he was very much involved. So I think a lot of artists, you know, well-known artists, all of a sudden they were asking who we were. And when they say like a critically acclaimed album, I think that's what we had, to be honest with you, without blowing our own trumpets. We really did, you know. A lot of people said to have listened to the album and really liked it, and we got a lot of covers off the album, and that was fantastic. You know, you were getting people like Heart cover your song, you know, and open their Wembley Arena shows with it, you know, and Bonnie Tyler did one, and Eddie Money, he did one, and in the end Steps did one, and it was just a fantastic time. And I think when you go to America has a fantastic feeling of a fantastic way of making you feel invincible, incredible, you know. And I think we walked out of JFK Airport, and we walked straight towards the first cab, and they said, no, that's not for you. And then the cab goes to one side, and of course there's a stretch limo there. We all each other. It's like, nah, this can't be real, you know. And of course that whole trip, even though we didn't play live on that trip, it was purely promotional, and we just went from city to city and from state to state, flying internally or driving to all kinds of different places. 2 weeks felt like 2 months. And in the best possible way, because you were going to bed somewhere, doing the day that you had, and then getting up and then flying somewhere else. And it was the beginning of thinking, hang on a second, have we got something here, you know? And it went into the Billboard chart. I think we got into the top 50 with the first single, and then of course they had 3 singles lined up, so we did all of our stuff on that, and then we started to play live, and, you know, then they start back thinking about bringing the second single out. But yeah, it was an amazing time. So yeah, we did sort of think, hang on, this could be something, you know.
So I know you went to see Heart with Lee Matty, and they opened with your song "Wild Child." Was that something that you knew was going to happen, or was it just a nice shock when you heard it?
No, it was an absolute shock. We knew they were going to play it because we know that Wild Child had done well with Heart on the playlist. It got to number 2 on the playlist chart, the Billboard playlist chart, and I think it was the playlist chart. Basically, it's the song. They take songs from the Brigade album, and it's the songs that they play most off that album that aren't singles. And I can't quite remember what they called it, but yes, it got to number 2 in that particular chart, and it was a shame, actually, because for that reason they decided not to make it a single. And I think if that hadn't have happened, because it already had a lot of airplay, I think they may well have used it as a single. But it was a total shock to hear it at Wembley, and I mean, we just we just jumped out of our seats, and it was fantastic moment.
Of course, Heart aren't the only people to use your songs, and there's one particularly interesting story about it. One of the tracks being used in Nightmare on Elm Street, yes. the original, and there was a video shoot as well, but you didn't actually get to film on the actual set.
No, we didn't. No, we did like a performance video with various little scenes with Lee doing this, that, and the other, and no, we had a whole load of excerpts from the movie that we were allowed to use and allowed to put into the video, and they're the ones. But no, we didn't meet Freddie himself. No.
Perhaps as well. So with all this success, it seems a mystery to the outsider as to what happened. So what's your take on why you didn't go on from that first album and that first single?
Well, we were waiting for Mutt to do the second album. And by that time now, we're looking at 1989. And Mutt was doing Bryan Adams, and we were all working in the same studio. We were working at Battery Studios in Willesden, and we were in the writing room, the production room. They had a little studio there that they called the production room, and we would write songs in there. They had a Fostex reel-to-reel 8-track in there. So because we were signed to the label, we could just use it and as often as we wanted to. And of course, in Studio 3, which is literally, 15 feet down the hallway, Bryan Adams was recording Waking Up the Neighbours with Mutt. And but it was just taking so long that in the end, it was Mutt just turned around and said, "Listen, I'm struggling here. I'm absolutely struggling, because if I let you wait for me, then it's going to be another 2 years." Because I think Bryan Adams had done all the guide vocals to his album, and I think he'd blown his voice out at that point, and they were doing vocals, proper vocals, and I think they were going back and taking some of the initial vocals that he'd done on the demos and using those, and it was just taking a lot longer than we ever envisaged. And he said the best thing to do is to go on. And unfortunately, the problem we had was that Zomba didn't want us to carry on without Mutt producing us, and neither did we, for that matter. But unfortunately, that was the way it turned out. So we lost the deal with Jive, and then we moved over to a company called Music for Nations, and we did another album with them. But this took us into 92, because we'd done a lot of touring in 89 and 90 for the first album, and then that took us into sort of 92, and there was a lot of problems with the sort of music that we were playing, because everybody was stopping listening to that and starting to listen to Nirvana and starting to listen to Soundgarden and Pearl Jam and all that. So all that music from the 80s that was so precise in rock had totally changed. It was like, well, let's stick 3 mics in a room and just record it and see what happens. I know that's not the case, but it was the whole grunge movement.
Yeah.
Music, didn't it? In the same way, I suppose, when punk came in at the end of the 70s and changed everything. Then, I mean, I think people are just looking for a new thing. Maybe rock AOR was a tad tired at that point and had run its course, and was looking for something else, something that was a little more earthy and a little more wayward. And as I say, cue Nirvana, cue Pearl Jam, and still some of the biggest bands in the world, and so unfortunately at that point we went our separate ways.
Right. And I know you've had a successful career in music since then anyway, so we'll come back to that after the break, but for now we're going to play another track from your album. This one's called Messing Around.
like my company. And though I've tried to make it work, you just look like you're giving up. 'Cause I've seen something in your eyes now, baby. I think that something ain't quite right now, baby. I know that my girl is messing around. I know that it's over now, but I don't know how to turn it around. The girl that I loved once ago, she never looked so beautiful. 'Cause I've seen something in your eyes now, baby. I think something ain't quite right now, baby. I know that my girl is messing around. Take me as I am, just don't try to change me. You know I love you all I can. I'm falling out of place, everything is ending, but I don't want to let it go. Tribute to love that was, is making sense of what you lost. However sharp and cold the pain, you know that you'll be back again. 'Cause I've seen something in your eyes now, baby. I think something ain't quite right now, baby. I know that my girl is messing around. I know that my girl is messing around. Messing around.
You're listening to Expat Radio, beaming out across France and around the world.
Hello, this is Mike Madden on the Arts Show on Expat Radio, and that was Messing Around from The Art of Landing, the new album from Craig Joyner. So, Craig, welcome back again, and let's talk about your music career after Romeo's Daughter, because you've been a library musician, recording music for series such as Friends, Cold Feet, and even this is the one that blows my mind, European Tour Golf.
Yeah.
So what inspires you?
I did some music, and it went on a Tiger Woods like documentary, and my music was all over that. And if anyone, I play golf myself, and if anybody ever says to me, you know, I've actually gone out and played golf. I've played with Tiger Woods, not literally, of course, but I've played with Tiger Woods because I had some music on his show, so on his program. So yes, I had music on all kinds of things like Oprah, all those 90s chat shows, you know, with the host, you know, and all that Montel or is it Montel or Mondell or those sort of things. Yeah, I had loads of that sort of stuff.
So do you get commissioned to do those specific things, or does the Universal just say, "Oh, can we just record something and then we'll use it for whatever we think"? Normally,
they brief you on a specific style of music, a specific genre of music that they want in a certain style. And I mean, the whole library thing started for me when I was signed to Zomba. I met a good friend there who is still a really, really good friend called Jez Paul. And he said to me, he was the head of library at the time, and he said to me, "You should do a library album." And I said, "Well, I'm full on with Romeo's at the moment, so as soon as I get some time, I would love to do one." And the great thing about library is that not so much nowadays, but it kept you in the studio, it kept you writing, and that just progressed all the way through to, I did my first one in 1996, and I've been doing them ever since. And they've been a fantastic way of maintaining a career in music and staying in the music industry, and staying in studios, working in studios all the time, and working with other musicians, drummers and bass players, and string quartets, which is amazing. To work with these people. They're all such talented people, and you get to do this for a living, and it's quite incredible, and I'm very thankful for that.
And you've also been a session musician, which is obviously very different to being in your own band. So how do you adapt to that? Because you kind of lose a little bit of creative control.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I haven't done an awful lot of session work, purely because I've always been a writer, and I've always been in projects of my own that have, you go on and you work on those particular projects. At the time when I was in Zombra, I got a few sessions just playing guitar. We just come in, play the guitar, and then you walk out at the end of the day, or in a couple of hours' time, you've done your session, and that's that. I've played very recently with John Rhino Edwards, who's the bass player of Status Quo. Sorry for the clang, but he's fantastic songwriter in his own right, and he was doing his own material, and I went out with him, and that really was the first time that I played consistently with somebody else in a band scenario. Not being a part of the band, but certainly being a session musician who goes out and does touring, and that was a hell of an experience. I really enjoyed that. But I think in the past, because I've been a writer, I've always been involved in what I've written and what I've been doing. So actually going on tour and being a specific hired gun, if you like, that hasn't really happened that much.
So you recently, well, fairly recently, reformed Romeo's Daughter. So what was behind that decision?
Well, in 2009, we were asked to do a festival in Nottingham at Rock City, and we sort of decided that, well, if we were going to get together again and do this, then if every original member of the band was into it, then we would do it, and they were. So we did it, and it was fantastic. We went on to write a load of songs and record another couple of albums, and I think we're in the throes of thinking about doing another one, but I think hopefully, we're going to try and hopefully see if we can get some sort of a record deal or something, to maybe help us push that through. But I mean, it was fantastic to get back together with everybody, and it was and it had so much more of a modern feel about it, which was incredible. That really was fantastic, and just to play, alongside your mates again. I look along the stage, and I look at Lee, and I look at Ed, and I look back at Andy and Tone, and I just think, this is fantastic. It was wonderful. I mean, that was one of the reasons why, the acoustic album took so long to come out.
It sounds a bit like the Blues Brothers were getting the band back together, but.
Yeah.
So when Rock City's a fantastic venue. When you sort of played there and at other places, did your fans still remember you as Romeo's Daughter, or were they new fans?
Well, at that particular festival, it was very much full of people that knew who you were, and when we first came on, I mean, it brought a lump to your throat. It brought the marquee back to me, the noise, and when we finished the set, it was jaw dropping, the response we got, and you just thought, crikey, people do remember, they do remember you. And we got some great reviews, and then we went out and did a small tour, and that all went really, really well. So off the back of that, I started writing songs, and we started putting an album together, and it was an experience, because everything had changed. All the music, everything in the music business had changed. And I mean, a lot of the people that used to like us, they've grown up, they've married, they got kids, some of them probably done, they're into vinyl, so whether they would know how they would know how to find us.
Yes.
It's quite a weird thing, because social media is such an incredible tool, providing you can get it to the right people. Whereas a record company back in the day, they seem to be able to have like the old bat button, the red button you could just push and it just went everywhere.
Yeah.
To the world. And whenever you did a gig, there was always a company that were flyering the gig before you got there. So when you drove into that particular town or city, your poster was on the wall and you saw it, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, before you'd actually reached the gig. So people knew you were playing. Whereas these days, if people aren't actively involved in looking at websites or looking for people or on Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is, then they're not going to see you. I remember we played in Newcastle. It was quite a big venue in Newcastle, and Lee went next door to get a sandwich, and bloke looked at him and went, "I don't believe it. It's Lee Matty. I don't believe it." And he went off and he said, "I can't believe it." She said, "Well, you must be coming tonight then." He said, "What are you saying? What do you mean?" She said, "Well, we're playing next door." And he had no idea. He just remembered Lee straight away for seeing her, and but he had no idea that we were on tour, no idea that we were back together. And I think that's the difficulty in a lot of these situations is getting people aware, making them aware that you are back and up and running, and and we're around. You can come and see us play, and you can get an album, because we have a couple since the last two that we did, 18 years ago.
Yeah, I think there is a huge cultural difference, because just in the same way that records are different, back then it was Melody Maker, Sounds, New Musical Express. You would keep up to date, and you knew when Romeo's Daughter were touring. But now, I guess most of those magazines and newspapers don't exist, and it is all on social media. I did see that Romeo's Daughter are active on Twitter as well. So, yeah. Moving forward. But Romeo's Daughter are listed as a British rock band, an AOR band, and you style yourself as a folk musician, and I guess the media try and pigeonhole everybody. But where do you see yourself? Do you ever see yourself playing more rock type stuff as a folk into your folk set?
Not necessarily. I think the two are very, very separate. I think the writing process is very similar. One is definitely heavier than the other, but I think the writing process is very similar. You come up with an idea and you might say, well, immediately that's a Romeo's idea, but then you could maybe change that and turn it into a folk song, or turn it into a singer-songwriter kind of folk song. I mean, I don't think that my album is strictly folk. I think that it has folk influences and country influences, and I use a lot of tunings, which gives it that folk sound, and I like that. And I think the way that I write and the way that I deliver a song, I wouldn't call that traditional folk in any way sense, but I think these days folk music, the line you draw between folk and country and folk and roots and new world music and all kinds of different genres of music is a lot finer than it used to be, and I think that's a good thing. It's a really good thing for folk music, because I think folk music as well and folk clubs are a fantastic way of getting yourself around. Whereas to try and get a band around in such an easy way would not be so easy. It would be very difficult to go and get gigs, especially when a lot of gigs, a lot of pubs, a lot of places are closing down. Whereas folk clubs still seem to be thriving. Granted, you lose one every now and then, but a lot of people are really into this kind of music. And, I'm not under any illusions. I'm not getting any younger, that's for sure.
None of us are.
Pardon?
None of us are.
No. No. And I just think that, you can go and play these places and, you can hear a pin drop when you're performing, and it's wonderful, it really is. That they give you the time. Anybody that's prepared to go and stand up in front of you and, pick a guitar up or whatever it is and play in front of you, they're prepared to sit there and listen. And it's a fantastic thing. It really is, and people are very encouraging. They're very encouraging. And I think folk musicians and people that run folk clubs and folk festivals, they're incredibly protective over what they do and what they have. And they're thinking about the future all the time, and because nothing lasts forever, and you've got to make sure that you keep maintaining, the way music is and the way people get to listen to music, and they're incredibly helpful. You go along, show your face, play, and if they like you, then that's it. You're part of the fold, in a great way, in a great way.
So we've got a minute or two left now. So just going back to the social media side of things, just let our listeners know where they can find out a little bit more about Craig Joyner and certainly about the new album, Art of Landing.
Well, that's kind. It's on, I have a website, which is craigjoynermusic.com. And even though my album is released in July, I have copies that are hard copies that are available on my website, pre-sale if you like, but they are available, and you can have one of those if you like. And also I'm on Facebook under the same name, which is craigjoynermusic.com, or Craig Joyner Music if you like. And the usual things. I've just been put onto Amazon, iTunes and Spotify, which is wonderful. So for every listen, I'll be about 0.00001 pence.
It's moved on from WH Smith HMV and the local record shop, hasn't it?
Yeah. I think in a couple of years I should be able to go out and buy a cornetto.
Well, it's been fascinating speaking with you tonight, Craig, and we certainly hope you'll come back on and tell us about your second album, and hopefully it's not going to be another 25 years.
Thank you, Mike. I really hope not. I mean, for this particular album, I'd written around about 20 songs, and I'm writing all the time. And I've certainly gained another 5 or 6 since the beginning of working on this album. So I think the second album, if I get my finger out, I'll have it recorded quite quickly. But I can't thank you enough for having me. Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. And we're going to pick one of those songs now. We're going to play out with the title track of Art of Landing.
Hey, so 1 and 2 make 3. It comes so easily when you're 9. And the wheels, well, they go round and round, pedals up and down, look, no hands. If there's one thing I know, when you grow up you get tall, and the world will feel so small until you land. Hey, I stayed up late last night, watched the cars go by from my room. Someday you'll have one just like that, fast and shiny and black. You'll get the girls. But there's one thing I know, when you grow up you get tall, and the world will feel so small until you land. Don't wish it away. So please don't you wish it away. If I stick a pin in the moon, will it fly around the room and down the hall? And someday to be an astronaut, some kind of cosmonaut, and save the world. But there's one thing I know: when you grow up, you get tall, and the world will feel so small until you land.
You're listening to Expat Radio. You're listening to Expat Radio, beaming out across France and around the world.
Well, that was Craig Joyner and the title track of his new album, Art of Landing, due out for the 5th of July. Now, regular listeners will know that one of my poems, They Will Not Play Again, about the victims of the Munich air disaster, is a finalist in the Poetry Matters competition. So, here it is. They Will Not Play Again. On a cold Munich day, in the ice and the snow, 44 souls filled with fear, filled with hope. In the dark, in the flames, there was nowhere to hide. 21 lived, but 23 died. Pioneers all, for the game, for the score, lost their lives for the cause of the game we adore. Friends torn asunder, families bereft, their time has gone, but we will not forget. The flyers and crew, those valiant men, will no longer serve, they will not fly again. The journalists too, not of sword but of pen, how mighty those words, they will not write again. And trainers and fans of the club to the end will never cast eyes on United again. Those players, those boys, those brilliant men, keep the memories bright, they will not play again.
You're listening to Expat Radio, beaming out across France and around the world.
Now, if all you listeners out there have got your own poems that you'd like reading out on the show, please get in touch. You can get in touch with us through our website, expatradio.uk, or through our Facebook page. Now, next week we've got two best-selling authors, Sandy Barker, all the way from Australia, and Bella Ashbourne, who's from the UK. Look forward to hearing those two talk about their latest novels. So, you've been listening to Mike Madden on The Arts Show on Expat Radio, and we're going to play out with the Eagles and Hotel California. You've been listening to The Arts Show podcast with Mike Madden. Come back soon for more artists, authors, musicians and anyone else connected with the arts. We're going to play out with Mike Sanchez and I Don't Stand a Chance.
Baby, you hiding something that you don't want me to know, because I'm getting a vibe from way down the side, like you're just about ready to go. And you can't tell me where you stayed last night, you just can't cope with treating me right. I'm on the road to heartbreak, now's the time to tell me so, because I'm getting a chill like I'm gonna be ill. I know you don't want me no more, I won't be satisfied with your little white lies. Girl, I've only just begun to realize I don't stand a chance, I don't stand a chance. You don't wanna know and I can't make you dance. Well, I said goodbye, find yourself another guy. I wish you were mine, but I'm losing my mind. I don't stand a chance. But you don't wanna love this man. On the road to heartbreak, soul. Because I'm getting a chill like I'm gonna be ill. I know you don't want me no more. I won't be satisfied with your little white lies. Girl, I've only just begun to realize I don't stand a chance. No, I don't stand a chance. You don't wanna know when I can't make you dance. Well, I'll say goodbye. Find yourself another guy. I wish you were mine, but I'm losing my mind. I don't stand a chance. I don't stand a chance. I don't stand a chance.